the cornfields of Cheshire. In these pleasant rural surroundings, a showpiece prison was built to house remand prisoners, men and women accused of crimes and still awaiting trial. Today, this model prison has become Britain's most notorious jail. During its 25-year history, the name Risley has become associated with suicides, disturbances and riots. The government's own Chief Inspector of Prisons called parts of it barbarous and squalid. It's now going to be flattened, and in its place a brand new prison will be built, and with it a new policy for dealing with prisoners on remand.
This then is an admission that that brave experiment of the 60s was not going to work, has been proved not to work.
It didn't work, and I never thought it was on, but that's hindsight, and it's easy to be wise after the event, isn't it?
Tonight, World in Action goes inside Risley Remand Centre. We were given free access to talk to both prisoners and prison staff. We examine Risley's troubled history and how the government's new policy will affect the jailers and the jailed, who live and work behind the wall.
Ever wonder what happens during a day in the nick? I'll show you.
Wakey, wakey, rise and shine, it's 7:30, stand in line. Please your breakfast, eggs and bread, cup of cold tea and you've been fed. Greet your partner.
A night out for the inmates of Risley. A travelling theatre group is staging a play called Borstal Boy. Written by an ex-prisoner, it portrays life in a traditional prison in the early 1960s.
Blankety blank, blankety blank. Greet your partner, say goodnight, back to yourself, turn up the light. You're thinking your friends when you're alone. You wish they were here and you were home. Shut up, git!
The new Risley was to be radically different from an old-style prison. Opened in 1965, it won awards for the design of its buildings. It was laid out with neat lawns and well-kept flower beds. Each inmate was to have his own room in hostel-like accommodation. Risley was purpose-built for remand prisoners. These are people held in custody awaiting trial. Although accused of crimes, they're still innocent in the eyes of the law.
The idea was that it was clearly very wrong to go on with the Victorian manner of keeping unconvicted prisoners in local prisons because they were mixing or alongside convicted prisoners. Therefore, that was wrong, and it had to be approached another way. Risley was born out of an ideal which said we will put these unconvicted prisoners that have to be kept in custody until they go to court in a special place, which will take care and preserve of all of their rights except actual liberty. And that's how Risley was born. A grand concept, a very bold stroke.
Defendants sent to Risley are accused of a wide range of crimes, such as shoplifting, burglary, robbery, rape and murder. Schoolgirl murderer David Evans was held here before being tried and sentenced last week. Drug addicts, alcoholics and the mentally ill can also find themselves locked up here. Some will be found guilty of crimes, but many others will not.
We do have people who are innocent being held in these conditions. A proportion of the people in Risley, as in every other remand centre and every other remand prisoner, will be found not guilty. And 50% of the people at the end, when they come to court and are tried, are found, the offence that they were found guilty of is not serious enough to warrant a prison sentence. So 50% of them will not get a prison sentence, and they are held in the worst conditions to await their trial.
Risley opened with a fundamental problem that was later to haunt the prison. The facilities had been planned on the assumption that most remand prisoners would only be locked up for days rather than weeks. There was little done to keep inmates occupied. We talked to one former inmate about conditions in the prison. Owen Williams was held in custody for 100 days in 1968. He was later found not guilty.
Well, I think I term it a sort of a desert of boredom, really. You know, people were getting on each other's nerves, even when they saw each other, which wasn't very often, because of the fact that we're being penned up for, 23 and a half hours a day. And lack of facilities, lack of recreation, obviously, and the fact that we were given 2 books a week to read, and even they couldn't select those books that were selected for them.
Conditions for remand prisoners today are less harsh but still severe. They're locked up in their cells from 8 in the evening till 7 in the morning. Meals have to be eaten locked up in cells because there's no communal dining room. Inmates can spend 17 hours a day locked behind a cell door. The award-winning remand centre made no concessions to modern sanitation. Prisoners slop out 4 times a day, the archaic prison practice of emptying chamber pots into a common sluice. A government report on Risley last year said that the absence of integral sanitation throughout the prison is a major factor in the overall lack of human dignity.
Winston Churchill said that you can judge a state and a nation by the way it treats its prisoners. And I think that is a very damning indictment on the quality of our civilised society, because we are treating remand prisoners who are technically innocent, and some of them actually are innocent, in the most disgusting way.
Because remanded prisoners are held to be innocent, they can't be forced to work. For Owen Williams, there was a desperate search for something to fill the day.
I'm not a religious fanatic, but I used to take my half-an-hour jaunts to the chapel on a Sunday. That sounds a bit hypocritical, just to get out. I suppose I did it mainly to get out of the cell.
Today, there is still no work for remand prisoners, except for 1 or 2 highly prized jobs. John Mancini is accused of stealing money from a bank using a computer.
Well, I personally make the tea for the officers, so that's probably one of the best jobs. I'm pretty sure it's one of the best jobs there is, because the door's open all day, and I just walk about and make the tea. And that's about all I do, really. It is boring. Prison is boring anyway. That's all it really is. It's boring.
Kurt Cave is accused of burglary and of driving whilst disqualified. He has another of the rare jobs available for remand prisoners.
The job entitles me to clean the twos landing, the first landing, the square. That I do in the mornings and at the night time, after everybody else is banged up, after slop out. And if you're friendly with a few officers, you can pull a few strings and get a job.
How important is it to have a job?
To me, it's very important, because I don't like to be behind my door. It's that little bit more freedom in there, do you know what I mean? It's less thinking time, really. When you're behind the door, you just think a lot. When you're out, you haven't got that much time to think.
But the biggest problem for remand prisoners is the uncertainty of their future. The workload in courts or on the prosecution often means delays in legal proceedings. Prisoners can be held at Risley for a week, a month, a year, or even longer. John Mancini has been held on remand for 4 months. His trial date could still be a long way off.
It's just the not knowing what your future's going to be. You can't make any long-term plans. You can't. All you keep telling your family is that I might be home next week and I might be going to prison next week. You just don't know. You're in a bit of a... and letter writing is very hard because there's nothing to write about. You can't write about the future. The past is gone. You know, what is there to write about? It's all guesswork as from then on, you know. What's going to happen to you?
Kurt Cave has been on remand for 7 weeks.
You know when you're getting out when you're convicted. If I was a convicted prisoner now, if I was doing time, I'd know when I'll be going home. That's the main difference. We don't know nothing here. We're just left to just wonder what's going to happen at the end of the day.
That's hard sometimes.
Yeah, that is very hard. Not knowing when you are going to go home or what you're going to get. That plays on a lot of people's minds, I would assume. Especially if you are behind your door like 23 or how many hours it is they do leave you behind your door. It's obviously going to think about it quite often.
Remand prisoners have always got every problem in the world. They're awaiting whatever the judgment of the court's going to be. They have all these problems about visits, what's going to happen to them. Where sentenced prisoners, it's all sorted out. Once they become sentenced, they're a totally different person altogether.
In what way?
Well, they settle down. They look after the cells, they look after themselves. They get into a standard prison routine, and they're quite happy getting on with their sentence and doing whatever they should do.
Robert Taylor is charged with robbery. He's been on remand for 7 months. There's no sign of a court hearing.
I try not to let it wear me down, but it does. You get depressed, you get anxiety attacks, you know, where you feel like you're knocking against a wall all the time.
His own safety valve is weightlifting.
It helps you relax, get rid of your tension, you know, because you've got to control your feelings inside. You've got to keep them all inside you. So you've got to let them out some way. So that's the way I do it, through the gym.
Take.
By the late 60s, Risley Remand Centre had a tarnished image as the prison with problems. There were 12 suicides by 1969, including 3 in 1 month in the summer of 1968. There were to be more later, including another 3 in 1 month in 1983. John Mancini believes a major cause of suicide is the uncertainty of a remand prisoner's life.
You cannot ever get used to going on remand for the simple reason that you just don't know what's happening. You're all hoping what's going to happen. You're hoping that you're going to be found innocent if you're innocent, or you're hoping that the judge is going to be lenient and not send you back here. It's not a deterrent, it's just a very big fear, more so for a young person that's never been in, or a man that's been in probably once. I think once a young fella's been in and been through the system, he will never fear it again, he will never commit suicide. But it's that first, you'll find, I think, most of those that do themselves.
It's always a shock coming into prison. It's the fear of what the neighbours think, what the wives think, and I think it just builds up on certain people, and they just can't handle it. And this is the case. I think this is why we have the suicides.
Doug Wilcock is one of Risley's most experienced prison officers. He arrived in 1975 at a time of crisis. The remand centre was experiencing a huge increase in the number of defendants being remanded to prison by the courts. Risley had been designed to hold about 600 people. By this time, its population had nearly doubled.
We were locking up near on 1,000. It was purely finding a bed for somebody, 3 meals and out again, you know. There was that much movement in and out of the prison. Sometimes it was a problem just getting a bed. We had a mattress, but not necessarily a bed.
8 o'clock in the morning in the prison square. At this time of day, it looks more like a bus station. Every weekday, prisoners due to appear in court assemble with their belongings. When the prison was at its busiest, as many as 30 coaches and 300 remand prisoners would leave and return from court each day. Risley had been designed to look after prisoners remanded from courts in a huge catchment area. It took in Liverpool and Manchester and ran from the Lake District in the north down to Stoke-on-Trent and across large stretches of North Wales. Some prisoners charged with offences in different places have to appear in more than one court.
Well, that's quite possible for a prisoner to be out on Monday, in on Tuesday, out on Wednesday, in on Thursday and out on Friday. If he's got more than one court appearance, it's quite possible. He could be out 5 days a week.
So it's quite an operation.
Oh, yes, it is. Not only for ourselves, it is for him, because every day he comes back, he's in a different cell, different pad mate. You know, he's got this constant to and fro in himself. It's like, you know, a mouse on a wheel. It's running around all the time. It's like what we feel sometimes with this. Constantly going to court is no good to anybody. Us, it's a lot of paperwork and a lot of hassle. It must be exactly the same for him.
As we speak, there are about 10,600 sitting in prison awaiting trial. And some of those have been there for months and months. And if you're found not guilty at the end of it, you have no redress, no compensation. If you lose your home, you lose your family is put under stress, you may lose your job. There's no compensation for that. Some courts are sending too many people into remand. It's interesting, there are enormous regional differences. Some courts have a remand rate of 2 or 3% of the people that come before them. Some courts go up as far as 30, 40% of the people that come before them. So it varies enormously, and we need to get a more consistent approach across the country.
A lot of young prisoners shouldn't be on remand. There's a lot of people, a lot of us shouldn't be on remand. You know, we're not violent. Personally, I'm not violent. I'm sure a lot of these are not violent. A lot of people shouldn't be on remand. That's why the prisons, remand prisons, are absolutely full. Because, you know, this is my opinion, because everyone's getting remanded. You get a magistrate remands people for shoplifting or a non-violent crime, and you're going to get overcrowding. When you get overcrowding, you get discontent.
The first casualty of the increased number of remands was Risley's original idea of one prisoner to a cell.
Well, they're single cells, like, they're meant to be single cells, but they're twoed up, like. It's just no room, you can't even swing a cat on it. There's no room at all, with two on the pad, like.
I think it's the way they built myself. They're small, like pigeon huts. You know, they're depressing. That's the only way you can describe it.
It'd be no good sticking an 18-year-old boy in with me, would it? I mean, what am I going to talk to him about? Or what's he going to talk to me about? He'll be talking about pop records and I'll be talking about Frank Sinatra. We'd have nothing in common in that respect, if you know what I mean. We'd have nothing book-wise or anything.
I find it appalling. I've been in this business well over 30 years. I remember distinctly being staggered by seeing prisoners locked 3 in a cell in Cardiff prison years ago. And it's really awful to think that here I am, you know, coming towards the end of a career, and it is no better. So what the hell have I been doing?
There is tension about. You can feel it sometimes. Sometimes you can really feel it in there.
Does that change day to day?
Yeah, depending on how many people are here.
Does it get worse when there are more people here?
Yeah. The more people, the more overcrowding it is, the more, you know what I mean? It's a lot worse.
It was against this background of overcrowding and increasing tension that the first disturbances occurred in 1980.
Why are you up on the roof? They wouldn't let us watch your programme on the TV.
It was a trivial matter that sparked it off, a dispute over what television programme should be watched. In the following years, the overcrowding continued. Conditions in Risley deteriorated as the fabric of the building began to crumble.
The buildings are built on what we call a hotel corridor design, and therefore they tend to be rather claustrophobic. The cells, as you've seen, are small and equally claustrophobic. If you're spending a long time in those cells, then there's really not enough space and air. And as the remand population nationally increased, Risley then began to struggle to cope, and it has struggled ever since.
Following more disturbances in 1986 and a fresh spate of suicides, the Chief Inspector of Prisons carried out a thorough inspection of Risley. Judge Tumin's report was scathing. Conditions in 2 of the remand wings were barbarous and squalid. Risley is a poorly designed institution in which many inmates are kept in appalling and totally unacceptable conditions.
The worries that I've been concerned about with prisons for my short period of the last 18 months have been firstly with sanitation, secondly with overcrowding, and thirdly with lack of occupation, what I referred to as enforced idleness. And it's that particular matter, it's lack of occupation, which is particularly unfortunate with remand prisoners.
Following that report, urgent measures were taken to improve life for the inmates of Risley.
We've made progress in relation to the suicide prevention arrangements. We've made progress in regimes, improved the education programme for both male and female prisoners. There have been developments in the PE programme and football referee courses, as well as the usual weight training activities and so on.
Okay.
And we've been looking at ways in which we can help people to be better qualified for bail. So in lots of ways we've moved forward.
Attempts, too, were made to improve the quality of the living accommodation for remand prisoners. D Wing was emptied and refurbished completely. But 2 months ago, the inhabitants of the newly decorated block rioted in the worst disturbances the prison had ever seen. There probably never is one simple reason why a riot starts in prison. Often it may seem very trivial. Several inmates did tell us that the underlying cause of discontent was the standard of food. It may have been the spark that set the riot off.
Timperley!
The kitchen, they've got to get their act together, you know, because it's causing a lot of... I mean, if they can cook in the army for 3,000 people, they should be able to cook right for 300 people, and that doesn't seem to be the case. You know.
It's just, by the time it's done, like, and gets over here, it ain't cold, it's just rotten taste, rotten, hot. Things aren't even cooked in the morning, like, for breakfast, bacon or the sausages. Not even cooked. It's just terrible.
Everything's boiled or steamed in prison. Yeah, so you get steamed bacon, steamed sausage, you know, which isn't healthy looking at all.
You were here during the last disturbance. Why do you think that boiled over?
It was to do with it had been building up over weeks. You had a lot of lads here then, and you're very volatile on remand, yeah. because you don't know what's happening, you know, you don't know anything, that's all there is to it, yeah, and it gets to you. And plus the food, and I mean, D-wing was clean, it was a clean wing, yeah, there's no getting away from that. But I mean, it takes more than a clean wing to keep people occupied, you know, and I think that was the case, because people weren't getting occupied enough.
It was one of the most vicious prison episodes that I've experienced, and I've seen a lot. There was a new dimension of violence, new levels of aggression. I've never seen staff attacked with such venom as was occurring at Risley, and quite plainly that mustn't be condoned in any way, because we were saying a moment ago these people are innocent, but that's not innocent, non-criminal, non-delinquent type behaviour. That's highly criminal, highly delinquent behaviour. And we can talk about excuses, but for me there are none. That's not the way, in fact, to change things.
In the next couple of weeks, the devastated block will be demolished. During the next 5 years, the old Risley will gradually be closed and pulled down. In its place will be a brand new, larger prison with integrated sanitation. The new prison will not be a large special remand centre. Risley will become a local prison, housing mainly convicted prisoners. That will be balanced by a small proportion of remand prisoners.
Why this change? Is it because these large remand centres catering for large numbers of people are regarded as a failure?
Not entirely. There are two reasons. One is because it's part of the prison department's plans to try to house remand prisoners nearest to their home, and therefore there is a strategy to do that. It's also to reduce this massive catchment area that Risley has. But thirdly, yes, it is to do with the fact that Risley has held far too many remands and needs a more balanced population.
This idea of a new balance in numbers between convicted and remand prisoners is welcomed by the prison staff.
Well, I think we're all over the moon of this happening. It allows us to slow down the system down. There's not, as I say, this constant rushing around to get everything done for the next morning. We're going to have a small group of remands from our catchment area. Because of the numbers are decreased, it allows a better quality of life inside the prison.
The remand prisoners too look forward to the new local prisons.
It's easy for the people outside, yeah, more than anything else. It's easier for visits, you know.
And how important are visits?
Visits are very important, yeah.
Why?
It's like getting your batteries recharged. You know, once you go on your visit and you see that your family's all right, then that's another day done, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a step in the right direction, yeah. Local people should be able to stay into a local prison and not be shipped about miles away, where it just makes their life and everybody else's life a lot harder.
Well, it's much better for the simple reason that I live in Derbyshire. I've been remanded because this is the remand centre for this area. So I'm miles away, I'm 2.5 hours away. There's people even farther away. But if you get remanded to your local, if you get nicked locally in, say, Canterbury, you would go to Canterbury and your people live at Margate. They would only have to come a few miles. So you could have a visit every day, which would take the pressure off you anyway.
I think the important thing will be that we'll take it away from the quite awful reputation it's developed over the last 15, 20 years. That's a terribly important thing. If you had an army or navy equivalent, you'd disband the unit. And that's, I think, perhaps not quite possible for us.
The wheel has come full circle. Remand prisoners will go back to the old system, the one before Risley was built. Yet some critics believe that the real problem is still not being effectively tackled.
I think the policy of having so many people remanded into custody to await trial has been the failure. Whether you hold them in separate centres or whether you put them into prisons, the old Victorian prisons, along with sentenced prisoners, that is a failure as well, and that will be a failure when the government closes places like Risley and moves everybody into local prisons. The failure is much more fundamental than the way you contain these vulnerable people. The failure is the numbers of them that shouldn't be there in the first place.